this meeting to order. There was a notice of public meeting for the Carson City Debt Management Commission for Wednesday, October 13th at 11 a.m., and that is the time. So if you could have a roll call, please.
Chairperson Hadaway,
Chair here?
Vice Chair Providenti.
Here, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you. Commissioner Jones,
Okay.
Commissioner Sanada, Commissioner Varner. A quorum is present.
Okay, and thank you, Nick, for calling in because we need 4 votes on these 2 issues, and it's important that we get them done today. We're going to pass on the approval of minutes until the next meeting in August. They're routine, but February, yeah, okay. Oh, we'll postpone them until August. They are the February minutes, right? No. Okay, well, yeah, right, you're right. Postpone them until the February meeting for the August minutes, okay. Okay, the first item D is discussion and possible action on a resolution concerning the submission to the Carson City Debt Management Commission by Carson City, Nevada, a proposal to issue general obligation water bonds additionally secured by pledged revenues in the aggregate principal amount not exceeding $7 million, concerning action taken thereon by the commission and approving certain details in connection therewith. Because this document, financial information, covers both of the items, I'm going to ask the staff to go over that for us. First, I'd like to thank the staff for the detail that you all went into, not only on the staff report, but also this one. But,
Mr. Chair, can I interrupt you for a second? I'm so sorry. We never call for public comment, so I'm sorry. I mean, we might want to do that real quick.
okay. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Carson City Debt Management Commission. I did check with staff, and there was no call-ins related to comment before the meeting or at this time. So knowing, are you a citizen? No? Staff. Oh, staff, okay. Okay, so there is no citizen comment.
No.
All
Okay.
right, thank you. Keep me on track.
I'm very sorry. I just
That's all right.
want to make sure we're all legal.
I only do this every 6 months.
All right, so I'll just briefly go over why we're issuing this debt, and then I'll turn it over to John Peterson. He's our advisor with J&A, and then we have Ryan Henry with Sherman Howard. He's our legal counsel for bond counsel. So the plan here, we want to issue $7 million for the Quill treatment plant. The goal is to upgrade the existing facility to maximize the city's water resources and increase drought reserves. We're also we're looking for earmarks of about $2 million or $1.5 million. And if we get those federal earmarks, we're not sure, we won't be sure until November, December timeframe, but if we get those earmarks, the bond would go down by that amount, so we would ask for less. However, to start the 90-day petition period, we're asking for a little bit more so we can get this moving. We're also asking for $8.1 million to build the new EOC, this Emergency Operations Center facility, the fire station, and the backup dispatch center. That would all be in one facility. And the goal is to put these 3 critical functions in one facility to get the biggest bang for our buck. And that we're also hoping for federal earmarks, so the amount would be less. And that one's $2 million. I think I'll let John and Ryan take it away with any questions, unless you guys have any questions for me.
Thank you, Sherry. John Peterson with J&A Consulting Group, for the record. And Chair Hadaway, I think it's very well said what you mentioned earlier, that really the detailed financial packet is what I'd like to walk through today. But before doing that, I'd just like to point out a couple of things for the public's benefit. The first is that the process to issue the bonds that the city is requesting, the 7 million water and 8.1 million of capital improvement bonds, requires the approval of the Debt Management Commission in order for us to proceed. The first action for these bonds was taken by the Carson City Board of Supervisors last week on Thursday, October 7th. That resolution was approved and asking the commission to meet, and really do appreciate the commission taking this meeting off schedule to help us kickstart this bonding process. Assuming approval today, we would go back to the Board of Supervisors at their meeting next week for them to adopt what's called a resolution of intent, which is another procedural step required under statute to issue these bonds. As Sherry mentioned, there is a 90-day waiting process that the city has to complete before bonds can be issued. City also will need to hold a public hearing as well before those bonds can be issued. We anticipate that the public hearing will happen in December. The 90-day period will end in January, and at that point, the city will be ready to issue the bonds once the Board of Supervisors has adopted a bond ordinance. So really just want, for the public's benefit, to point out that this is, we're still kind of in the initial steps here. This is not the last time that the public will have an opportunity to comment on these. The materials that we've submitted show that the city's proposal complies with the requirements in NRS 350 for issuance of general obligation revenue supported bonds. And just some high-level summary, we do not anticipate that the city will need to levy a property tax to repay these bonds. The bonds will be fully supported and paid back from pledged revenues, which for the water bonds includes revenues from the water utility, and for the capital improvement bonds includes revenues associated with the city's distribution of consolidated taxes. And there will be no impact on the other overlapping entities in Carson City, will not impact their ability to issue debt. So entities like the state of Nevada, the Carson City School District, there will not be any impact. And then I guess what I would like to do is skip forward in the information packet to page 3, not Roman 3, but the actual number 3, to talk about the outstanding debt of the city. And this is just a table we put together for the benefit of the commission. Currently, the city has outstanding approximately $146 million of outstanding general obligation debt. As I'll note, specifically for the water bonds, about $46.1 million of that is secured by revenues of the water fund. And for the $8.1 million capital improvement bond, the two bonds in the bottom, the Capital Improvement Series 2013A and Capital Improvement Series 2015C, are also secured by those consolidated taxes. That's about $20.5 million of outstanding debt. Going over to page 4, our total request today is $15.1 million. And so one of the criteria in NRS is for the city to show that the outstanding debt plus the proposed debt will not cause the city to exceed its statutory debt limitation. That debt limitation is 15% of the city's total assessed value. The 15% comes from Carson City's charter. Based on the current fiscal year of $1.9 billion of assessed value, which includes both the city and the Carson City Redevelopment Agency, the statutory debt limitation is approximately $287 million. And once you subtract out the existing $146 million plus the $15.1 million, leaves approximately $126,371,000 of additional statutory debt capacity. And I will pause here and say that just because you have debt capacity does not mean that you have the ability to afford that debt. This is just a test that's written into statute, and we need to comply with. There is no plan to issue $126 million of additional debt. Sorry.
One question that's come up is, do we have to continually meet this test? And no, it's just when one thing that's come up as a question is, do we have to continually meet this test? What happens if our assessed value goes down? Do we have to continually meet this test? And no, this is a test we have to meet when we issue the debt, and that's it.
Thank you, Sherry. Yes. Looking over to page 5, again, these are kind of some high-level summaries on both of the proposals. Again, we anticipate that the water revenues from the water utility, the pledged water revenues, will be sufficient to repay the existing water bonds and the proposed water bonds. And we anticipate that the pledged revenues from the consolidated tax will be sufficient to pay the existing capital improvement bonds and the proposed capital improvement bonds. No impact on overlapping entities. The current tax rate in Carson City is $3.57. That is below the maximum that's allowed, which is $3.66. And some folks may wonder, it says $3.64 in the statute, and we say $3.66 because the state levies a 2-cent tax that is outside of that limit. So just for clarification there. And with that, I think I'd like to focus first on the water proposal, and so I'd like to skip over to page 8. If there are no questions, I guess I'll pause and see if there are any questions on the general presentation. Thank you. For the water bonds, again, we're proposing $7 million of water bonds. They will be repaid over a 20-year period. Again, we anticipate issuing bonds in early calendar year 2022, and the last payment on those will be due in fiscal year 2042. And so that we're anticipating those bonds will be paid over a 20-year period. Conservatively, we have estimated that the interest rate is 4%. The school board is probably well aware that the schools just issued some bonds over a similar period, and I believe their interest rate was about 2%. So we're being conservative here. We anticipate that if the city were to issue bonds today, we'd be very close to where the school received on their interest rate. However, we have to wait 3 months, so we are kind of padding things a little bit just to make sure that we can show that we have that affordability and that we're not going to exceed the numbers that we're presenting to the commission. When you combine the proposed bonds with the existing bonds, our high watermark in terms of debt service occurs in fiscal years 26 and 27 of approximately $5.8 million in those 2 years combined. And so then I will go to page 9, which shows the city's ability to afford these bonds from the revenues in the water fund. The pledge that secures the bonds is the operating revenues of the city's water utility. And so if you look at the far right column for the budget for fiscal year 2022, the operating revenues are approximately $17.7 million. There are some other miscellaneous revenues that are pledged to the bonds, such as connection fees, interest income, et cetera, of approximately $400,000 in fiscal year 2022. And then adding those together, you get approximately $18.1 million of gross revenue. And from that is subtracted the operating expenses, which includes salaries and wages, services and supplies. Basically, when you look at the city's financial statements, all of the operating expenses excluding depreciation, because depreciation is not a cash expense. In fiscal year 2022, those numbers are budgeted to be $9.1 million. And so that leaves the city with pledged revenues to support the bond payment of approximately $9 million. And then comparing that to our $5.8 million high water mark from the previous page, it shows that the city has approximately $3.2 million of revenue available to pay debt service that is not actually going to be used. And I will point out that there is one typo at the bottom of page 9. It talks about the maximum annual debt service occurring in fiscal 23. That's actual 26. I apologize for that. I fat-fingered when I typed that in.
Do have 3 audited years on that page, which indicated that the city was covering all their debt at the time.
Correct. And I will also point out for the record that the Board of Supervisors have approved a rate schedule, which includes increases, I believe, for the next 3 fiscal years, 24?
I think it goes through 26. 3 fiscal years, okay.
So those are rate increases, I believe, of 3%. So we are expecting that revenues will increase based on those rate increases, and obviously that does offset what you would anticipate would be some operational cost increases as we move forward. Okay. And then going over to page 10, just kind of a holistic picture of the water fund and its debt service. We do have a bond that is payable from the water revenues, but is not actually secured by a lien on those. And so these bonds are actually paid after the bonds that we're talking about. If you're talking about like a first and second mortgage, which is not really the correct analysis, but I think folks understand that. The bonds that we're talking about will be the first mortgage. These would be the second mortgage. These are paid after the other bonds are paid. But again, that debt service is significant for the next couple of years, and so we just wanted to show that we have the ability to pay those bonds as well. And that bond we did in 2020 was just to refinance some existing debt for savings, which is that purpose. And again, want to show that the water debt, the proposed and existing debt is affordable. And I'll just pause and see if there are any questions on the water proposal.
Mary, Stan, have any questions?
I did have a, just a curiosity question. Where, do you know where the water fund is getting the interest earnings from?
I think generally that would be the balance that's held in the water fund. So generally you keep a cash balance in these funds. There are months that are leaner months than others, and so you want to make sure that your revenues are sufficient. You're not having to draw down on cash to a point where you have none. So that would just be interest from earnings that are, you know, just like you said, sit money in the
But
bank.
it's not the bond proceeds.
Correct.
the
It is not
water-
bond
It's
proceeds.
interest earnings, yeah.
Nick, you have a question?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
And-
Okay,
and
please
thank you.
continue.
And Chair, I guess I would ask, would your preference be to take a vote on the water bond? I think Ryan's nodding his head.
Yeah,
Yes.
for the record, Ryan Henry from Sherman and Howard. I would just suggest that we discuss and,
Okay.
you know, take a vote on the water proposal separately before we move on to the separate
Okay,
second proposal, if that works for everybody. Thank you.
okay, members of the commission, does anyone have any questions on Sherry's staff report, which, again, I thought was very, very good?
I could do a motion, Mr. Chairman, if you like.
Okay, go ahead, Nick. This is Resolution
Sure, I would-
2021 DMCR1.
Correct. I move to adopt resolution number 2021 DMCR1, a resolution concerning the submission to the Carson City Debt Management Commission by Carson City, Nevada, of a proposal to issue general obligation water bonds additionally secured by pledged revenues in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $7 million, concerning action taken thereon by the commission and approving certain details in connection therewith.
Nick moved and Stan seconded. Is there any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, Resolution 2021 DMCR1 has been approved. Okay, please proceed, John.
Thank you. John Peterson for the record again. And so I guess first I'd like to say I'd like to incorporate my general comments from the prior item into this item regarding the city's outstanding debt. I won't go through that again
Right.
to save the commission time, but would like to then flip over to page 12 of the supporting materials to really talk about the capital improvement bond proposal. This is a proposal to issue $8.1 million of capital improvement bonds. These bonds are secured by a lien on 15% of the city's distribution of consolidated taxes. Consolidated taxes is one of the larger revenue sources in the city's general fund, and by statute, by limitation in law, the city is only allowed to pledge 15% of those revenues. I believe in fiscal year 2021, the estimate for the receipt of those revenues was about $41 million. But when you take the 15% pledge, that pledge towards bondholders is closer to $6 million. Just want to make that clear for the record. The proposal to issue the bonds, similar to the proposal for the water bonds, is to issue over a period of 20 years. I believe it actually says 21 years in the resolution that the Board of Supervisors adopted, and that's simply because we anticipate issuing the bonds in February of 2022, and the final payment would be in May of 2022. So 20 calendar years from, it's just slightly beyond 20 years. So we just put 21 to be cautious. But really, those will be paid off at the end of fiscal year 2042. Annual debt service on these bonds, when you combine, is about $600,000 per year for that 20-year period. When you look at the city's existing debt service actually drops after fiscal year 2022. 2022 is the last payment for some bonds that the city issued many years ago. Current debt service is $2.9 million. It's almost $3 million for the current fiscal year. And so with that debt rolling off, looking to kind of do these projects and not exceed what the city's currently paying, assuming these bonds are issued at a 4% interest rate, which again, we think is conservative, annual debt service still maxes out at $2.8 million. So there is a slight drop. And so feel that that's an appropriate thing for the city to do. Going over to page 13, again, these are the numbers that I was talking about a little bit earlier. We would pledge 15% of the consolidated taxes. In 2021, the estimate is that consolidated taxes were $41.3 million. That makes the revenue pledge approximately $6.2 million. And from looking at the numbers that we have at the bottom of that table on page 13 on the far right, compared to the $2.93 million that we're currently paying, have plenty of affordability based on the 15% pledge. And I will point out that it doesn't mean that if consolidated taxes dropped by $3 million, that all of a sudden the 15% pledge is not sufficient. For every dollar that consolidated tax drops, the pledge only drops by 15 cents. So you have to kind of think about that math. It's a little bit unusual, and so I just want to point this out for the record. Based on where we are in the debt service we're anticipating, consolidated taxes would actually have to fall below $20 million before the 15% pledge is not sufficient to repay the debt. So I just want to point that out because the math isn't completely transparent, or transparent's the wrong word, apparent from looking here. But that really is the magnitude of drop that we would have to see. And just for some historical context, the last time the city saw consolidated taxes in that range of $20 million was back in fiscal year 2012. So it was 9 years ago, kind of in the depths of the Great Recession. So we anticipate that the C tax is going to be sufficient to repay these bonds. That really is kind of my high-level summary, much shorter on this one than it was on the water bond. We'll pause and see if there are any questions from the commission.
Okay, are there any questions of John on this? Okay, let's proceed. There were 2 additional pages that were in the agenda. Are they substitutes for something?
The additional pages, I think, those were the materials that the Board of Supervisors reviewed when they approved their resolution last week. So they are required to do a revenue study, and this presentation that I gave is a more detailed version of that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Sherry's staff report?
Mr. Chairman, I can go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, this is Resolution 2021 DMCR2. Nick?
Okay, I move to adopt resolution number 2021 DMCR-2, a resolution concerning the submission to the Carson City Debt Management Commission by Carson City, Nevada, of a proposal to issue general obligation capital improvement bonds, additionally secured by pledged revenues in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $8,100,000, concerning action taken thereon by the commission and approving certain details in connection therewith.
You have a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Nick and a second by Mary. Any other questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Alrighty. Thank you. That's a 4-0 vote on both of them, so we meet our requirements, and we'll go from there. Thank you for your presentation, John and Sherry and Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For information only, next commission meeting is scheduled for February 8th. Mary, here we go. The meeting of August minutes will be approved February 8th. Okay, public comment. The public is invited again at this time to make any comments if they have any, and I see no.
There are no callers on the line at this time.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Within 45 days from the last meeting or at the next meeting, whichever occurs later. So
Okay.
given the fact that the previous meeting was approximately 60 days ago, I am suggesting that you address whether there is good cause to postpone the approval of minutes until the next meeting, or if you'd like to take a moment to review the minutes and decide whether to approve them or not at this meeting.
Well, we didn't receive a hard copy. That's the reason I was suggesting. So, Nick, did you have an opportunity to review the minutes? We can do this.
I didn't receive them either. Did we get them electronically?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you can look it up electronically, we'll just take a minute.
Yeah, they're in the
Okay.
first electronic communication that we got.
Oh, yeah, I got them. I'm good with the minutes whenever you guys are ready.
Okay, well, on the basis of the fact that I don't want the Debt Management Commission to be in violation of the open meeting law, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August 10th, 2021.
I'll move to approve the minutes of August 10th, 2001.
You have a second? Oh, you weren't here, Stan, so,
That'd be 2021, correct?
yeah.
2021, yes, sorry.
Yeah. 21. I second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
thank you. And we will then adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Hi.